Alright, so the video we're going to be tackling today is called Secrets of the Moon by Spirit Science. Needless to say, it's by a YouTube channel called Spirit Science, so I'm pretty sure a lot of their claims are not going to be very factual. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Man, I love the moon. Would you say the moon is masculine or feminine?
You know, what a great question. Is the moon masculine or is the moon feminine? I'm pretty sure it's neither, because the moon's a rock.
Spiritually speaking, I've most often heard that it embodies female energy.
Me too, but we have Mother Nature full of life and creation. Wouldn't the moon be the father?
You do realize that this is just a saying, right? Like Mother Nature. Father Time. That's just a saying. If I go around calling some random guy in the street daddy, he's not my dad. He's just a guy I call daddy.
Yeah, you might think so. However, our celestial father is most definitely the sun. It's because of our father above and our mother below that allows all of this life to exist. The moon is actually neither, which makes me think it must be more like a cousin. But perhaps what's more curious about old Lady Luna is that her existence has actually never been explained by modern science.
Who needs science to explain things?
Right. I mean, I know you don't.
Were you homeschooled? Were you never told that the moon was from the earth? Did you pay attention in science class at all? Because I'd assume not, because if you did pay attention in school, you would know where the moon came from. But since you obviously don't, I had to explain this to you like I'm a fourth year elementary school teacher. The moon was formed when a Mars-sized object hit Earth, launching debris into its orbit, and over a long period of time, those pieces came together to form the moon. Bingo bangle, there's your explanation of the moon.
But isn't it interesting that using science we can build nuclear weapons, but cannot even explain this most ancient entity that floats at our doorstep? What's stranger, the moon is actually far too big to be a natural satellite of the Earth. If I'm not mistaken, there is not a single other planet in our solar system whose moon compares in ratio to our own Earth-Moon ratio. Our moon is actually larger than Pluto. The current leading theory in science is that something like a Mars-sized planet-like rock came out of nowhere and hit the Earth, and then it became the moon. And when those physics didn't work out, they came up with a new theory that said that the same planet-like rock-like thing hits the planet, bounces around, and then hits it again, and then becomes the moon. Needless to say, the physics still didn't work.
Earlier you said that science has no idea how Earth's moon formed. But then you just said that science has an idea on how Earth's moon formed. Which one is it? Second off, in your depiction of the moon's formation, you're making it act like it's a golf ball being thrown on pavement and bouncing back up. It's more or less like throwing sulfur onto concrete. When that object hit Earth, it spewed some of Earth's innards and some of its innards out into its now orbit. Those pieces collected together and formed the moon. It's not like a ball hitting the ground. It's a huge explosion of matter.
Well, what the hell? Is there more?
Well, now that you ask, have you ever heard anything about it being hollow?
Hollow?
Yeah, I've got the details somewhere here. Let's see. Here it is. In November of 1969, NASA crashed a lunar module into the moon, causing the equivalent of 1 ton of TNT. NASA said that the moon reverberated like a gong for half an hour. Then they did it again, causing an impact of 11.5 tons of TNT, and it rang like a bell for over 4 hours.
So the moon's atmosphere and space around it have no air, meaning there's no medium for sound waves to pass through. And in order for sound waves to make sounds and move, they have to pass through a medium. So if there's no air for anything to pass through, it would then stand to reason that there be no sound. So how the hell did NASA hear a gong when they dropped the lunar module onto the moon?
It vibrated in a way as if it were hollowed out, with giant hydraulic damper struts inside of it.
Wowsy wheezy.
Want to know something else?
Always.
The surface of the moon contains minerals like titanium, but also processed metals like brass and mica.
So I've been searching for about like 20 minutes or so to try and find that anything that says the moon has brass. And the only websites that I've seen are from alternative sites, and I haven't seen sources cited on their website. So I'm not going to use those sources because I don't know if what they're saying is fact or not. So I leave this up in the air saying I don't know. But what I do know is that mica is naturally occurring because mica isn't a metal, it's a mineral. So if you want to make a claim about processed metals on the moon, make sure one of the things you list is actually a metal.
It also contains something called uranium-236 and neptunium, which are both minerals that have never been found to occur naturally. Uranium-236 is a long-lived nuclear waste that appears in spent nuclear fuel, and neptunium is a radioactive byproduct of nuclear reactors when plutonium is being created. This means that at least some of the rocks on the moon are most likely synthetic.
So out of all that reasoning, with uranium on the moon, with brass, mica, and titanium on the moon, you got to the conclusion that the rocks on the moon are fake. Behold, it is I, God. I am going to make the moon out of cheese, plastic, and that weird stuff you find beneath your shower drain. Yeet! Boom! The moon. What's good?
And while it's only a theory, I wouldn't say it's illogical to come to the conclusion that it could be artificially created.
Isn't artificially artificial and double negative? That means it's there by natural causes then.
That's really intense.
Also, you know the craters on the moon?
Intimately.
Well, craters should vary in depth due to the size and impact of the various space rocks that hit them, right? We can tell that there was a difference in the meteor sizes that hit the moon by the diameters of each crater. And yet, how come all of them, across the board, are the same depth?
Mother of God, an impenetrable shell!
Every crater on the moon has a different depth. It only appears that they all have the same depth. For example, the crater Tycho. The crater Tycho has a depth of about 15,000 feet or so. That's pretty fucking deep. But the South Pole on the moon has a depth of 13 kilometers. That's pretty deep. Bailey, the crater Bailey, has a depth of 14,000 feet. Shackleton has a depth of 4 kilometers. The moon has differing depth of craters. They're not the same.
Look at that quote from a NASA scientist. It's easier to explain the non-existence of the moon than to explain its existence.
Here's another one. The best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon does not exist.
Why do I get the feeling that there's more context to these quotes than you're showing?
Oh, here. Read this part here.
David Icke's research led him to shaman around the world.
You chose to follow David Icke, the guy that thinks that lizard people are a real thing, that the moon is an egg from which those lizard people hatched out of. Then again, you think the moon is fake, so yeah, it makes sense why you'd use that now. Never mind.
Zulu tribes speak of the moon being an egg. They symbolize it to be an egg for good reason. The ancient African and Sumerian legends talk of two brothers, Wawan and Mpanku, that emptied out the yolk and rolled the moon across the sky to the earth and caused cataclysmic events hundreds of generations before our time.
I'm not sure how it fits, but this says here that the rocks on the moon are older than the Earth itself.
Heavens. You know, I think I've only ever seen one side of the moon. I wonder why it doesn't spin like other planets.
First off, the moon is not a planet. The moon is a satellite. Second off, the moon actually does spin. The moon orbits Earth every 27.332 days. As a result, the moon does not appear to be spinning, but it is. This is called synchronous rotation. Basically saying the Earth is spinning at almost the same rate the moon is, giving the appearance that the moon isn't spinning when it actually is.
That's a good question. On that topic too, have you ever noticed that the size and position of the moon is exactly in the right place to create a perfect solar eclipse?
That's so intense. You know, the moon actually holds the Earth in a sideways tilt. If we didn't have the moon, we wouldn't have the same length of days or nights, or experience the 4 seasons like we do. It also intimately controls the tides.
You're right. And just like the tides, it even bends the water in our bodies. That's why on nights of the full moon, there's always an increase of violent crimes, and probably passionate love. It used to be a legal defense to say that one was moonstruck.
Do you think these things were deliberately introduced to the Earth? Maybe for a purpose?
It's a possibility.
What do you think that purpose could be?
Well, they say that the beings who put it there were trying to bring a new frequency to the planet.
Who said that? Who the fuck said that? You can't just say they say that. You have to answer your statement and tell us who said it.
Or maybe even provide us with some sort of resonation or gravitational wave that was vital for our survival. I've read that the Earth isn't even in the right place in the solar system anymore. The story goes that at one point, the Earth used to exist between Mars and Jupiter, and may have even been slightly larger than it is today. But it was hit, and it flew off course, creating the asteroid belt.
I want to fucking shoot myself so fucking bad. Do you know how many asteroids in the asteroid belt? Even though it's not like in Star Wars where they have all the asteroids really close to each other within inches of each other, there are still hundreds of thousands and thousands and thousands of these asteroids out there. If all of them were combined onto Earth's gravity, we may be even bigger than Jupiter. That's a may, I don't necessarily know. That is such a ridiculous claim, and you have no evidence to back it.
Which is mostly frozen water and rock debris, and wound up in a new orbit, right here. But because of the impact of what happened, this planet was going to die, and it needed some help to keep it spinning and keep its orbit proper. And thus, the moon was put there by some advanced alien race or a higher form of consciousness who saw it as a requirement for the planet's survival. Maybe even our own survival. Which would explain why the Earth-to-Moon ratio is found within the human energy field.
The what?
Then, events such as the falling of Atlantis and rising back to consciousness could take place under circumstances that otherwise couldn't have happened.
That's really amazing. Wait, did you say that the human geometries match the Earth and the Moon ratio?
Hey, I think you're really gonna love this. In Drimbolo's Flower of Life books, he shows these drawings here. As you can see, this is the Egg of Life, mapped over Leonardo da Vinci's Canon of Man, along with a proportionate 8x8 grid. Around the Egg of Life, you see 2 rings. This is the zona pellucida, the membrane around the structure.
Okay, so I get that those things are important sacred geometry, that are connected somehow, but I don't see the link yet.
It's okay, we're just getting started. First, we have to identify the male and female side of the equation. On the top level, you have a circle and a square. They fractal down to the 8 physical spheres and the 8x8 grid of squares. See how you can draw a circle that fits perfectly inside of these circles, and you'll get a circle that's just slightly smaller than the 4 squares put together? It just so happens to also fit perfectly around the edge, balancing between the inner circles and the outer larger circle. Now, if we take the 4 squares and use them as a measure, we can create a new circle, slightly larger than the smaller one we just drew. If we move it to the top, it pushes out beyond the inner circle a little bit, and what we're left with is the inner and outer edge of the zona pellucida, and a delineation of the human energy field. This is the location of the 13th chakra, by the way, at the very top of our energy field above our head. Now, nobody knows where this next part I'm about to show you actually comes from.
I'm pretty sure I know where the information came from. It came from up your ass. This is the biggest load of horse shit I have ever heard in my entire life. Okay guys, I would have finished the rest of the video, but the rest of the video was filled with copyrighted music, and there was nothing else really to argue with anyway. At the end of the video, it was just them talking about spirit science and why we may be choosing a certain style of life over another because of the moon. But yeah, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, leave a like down below. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more of my content. If you have a suggestion for me, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll go ahead and look at it. And yeah, that's it for me. I'll tell you guys later. Peace.